Welcome. This is the first in a group of lessons about mental models and frames and how they can be used to improve messages. What we'll see is that frames are very powerful and often unconscious scripts that we use to understand information. Now, what does that really mean? Well, you probably hear or have heard terms like mental scripts or mental narratives or mental stories, or simply the term frames themselves. For right now, we can equate them all. They mean that there are frames or stories or scripts that you have based on experience and prior knowledge that organize information for you. And so that if we take something simple like the hare here, we know that the tortoise beating out the hare in a race is a familiar frame that we can fit new information into. So too, the young hero setting out on a journey and he faces many challenges. And, and I think you can finish this one yourselves. What usually happens to this hero? Well, he goes on to become a prince and win the princess. So let's take our hand and try a frame. Margaret came to school as usual this morning. Now, based on the frame of who we think comes to school as usual this morning, who is Margaret? Well, pretty good guess is she's a student. The frame sets us up for that. But if we make a modest alteration in the frame, let's see what happens. So Margaret came to school as usual this morning, but when she arrived, the principal asked her to teach an extra class, and with that frame, now who do we say Margaret is? Well, indeed, we see that Margaret is a teacher. So the frame helps us anticipate what's coming, and we have a slot we can put Margaret into. So too, let's say the title of an essay, Marriage Equality. Using this frame, we would anticipate that the essay looks at marriage equality perhaps from a positive point of view regarding same-sex marriage. But if the article or the essay were entitled Family Protection Act, we might see that frame as taking a less than favorable view of same-sex marriage. Now, the very same things that go on with framing in the examples we used occur in health and health communication all the time. So we might be framing a public health message as the disease is a defeatable enemy, whereas the patient or the public is walking around with a frame of the disease as a fated thing, something that will have to take its course. And therefore, we may not communicate very, very well because we are using different frames. And this is precisely the lesson for today. Framing is so important that we have to be sure that our frames are appropriate to our audience, which means we have to know how the audience is framing information. Let's look at childhood obesity as one of the last examples. If we frame this as an epidemiologically based message for the public, we might talk about childhood obesity rates over the last 30 years, or that more than 1/3 of children between the ages of 6 and 11 are now overweight and obese. That's an epi frame. But if our public is not using that frame, we're not going to be as effective. Here's another frame used by the state of Georgia in its Strong for Life campaign. If you take a close look here, this frame is doing something quite different. It's almost stigmatizing of overweight and obese kids or their parents. It's another frame, but perhaps a problematic one. So, as an introduction to the idea of mental models and frames, we hope that you realize how very important they are to creating messages, and we've created a short reading list for those of you who want to read on further. And I hope this was useful to you, and I hope you will look into other lessons we have on mental models and framing. Thanks. Have a good day.